I think
I
so
think
too.
it's good. Sorry, guys, we had a little meltdown at the top there. This is the Patriots post-game show. I hope so. I hope it's the one that you guys all jumped in waiting to see. We had a weird false start there, technical glitch. I'm not going to blame anybody. Certainly not Mike. I'm not going to
It's
blame
not my
Mike.
fault.
I'm not going to
We're
blame
on.
Mike.
I just checked YouTube. We're all good.
Okay, good. We're waiting on Alex Barth
Yes.
to get his piece posted for 98.5 The Sports Hub, and he's going to pop on and join us. And we are going to talk about obviously the win brings the Patriots to 3-3, quarterback situation, which I got to tell you, Mike, I don't know where you are, and I know we're going to spend a lot of time on it. I know everybody.
Probably too much time.
Ryan started the show. Thanks, Ryan. I don't know. This was not a conversation, I swear, heading into yesterday. And now I think it's a real heading into today. And now I think it's a conversation. And I don't get it. Well, and I'll tell you why it is. I'll tell you why it's a conversation. But we're gonna get everybody's take on it. The chat's gonna chime in. Zappy versus Mac. Well, what are we gonna do here? We will see. But apologies to those who waited. We were trying to jump on a little earlier. We wanted to wait till that KC Bills game ended. We thought it might go to OT. Alex was finishing up some writing. So we're going to hang with you guys for a bit here and talk about the Pats win. Just before we get into the quarterbacky-ness of it all, an interesting game, Mike, because heading into the game, you're like, Pats are just going to run it. Browns can't defend the run. And try to limit what Zappy does. And then, try to control their ground game. And for the most part, their blueprint worked in the sense of good defense, limit turnovers, and that's what you want to do and make the game easy for Zappy. Don't ask him to do too much, except they actually had to ask him to do quite a bit because the run game wasn't as effective as they expected it to be right out of the gate. They weren't just gashing the Browns, so they had to open it up a little bit and let Zappy cook, as we like to say. And obviously he did. The stats really speak for themselves here. And again, we can qualify this, Mike, with every single thing that you're going to say, and everyone will say it's just the Lions and the Browns. It's not a good defense. Yeah, sure. Cleveland's got a bad defense, but their pass defense is middle of the pack.
Right.
And they carved him up, and they're without some players too. Some of his throws were easy, but you can't deny the fact that the eye test tells you that this was a really good game for him.
Agreed.
The eye test and the stats, of course.
Right. He's running their offense
he's running a real offense.
Yeah. He's running the offense, a real offense, exactly how they want him to run it. You can see my shirt. I'm rocking Mac Jones. I'm still Team Mac right now. But
I'm wearing the Noble. That's Mac's sponsor.
Yeah, exactly. So. We're both still Team Mac. So no, I mean, I don't want to call this a quarterback controversy yet because I don't really think it is yet. But like you said, Zappy's doing exactly what he needs to do to run the offense and get them points. We'll get into the quarterbacks when Alex is on here a lot more in depth. But over 300 yards. He had a 118 passer rating. Like he was not just carving up a Lions defense like he did last week. He played real quality NFL starting quarterback football today, and it was impressive. My one takeaway, though, and Zappy's included in this mix, my main takeaway from this game is just the quality players that this team has drafted over the last 3 years. I tweeted about this. I wrote about it on CLNSmedia.com. The criticism of the Patriots draft picks of late has to end, and it ends today. You have guys like Kyle Duggar, Mike Onwenu, Mac, who didn't play but has been playing solid football for 2 years, Christian Barmore, Ramondre, and that's all not even including this year. This year you have five rookies, Cole Strange, Tyquan Thornton, Jack Jones, Marcus Jones, and Bailey Zappi, who are all rookies in their first season in the NFL playing quality football and leading to NFL wins. So I know there's the N'Keal Harrys of the world and there's the Dominique Easleys of the world and the Jawan Jones, and I get all that, and that he was right for being criticized for that. But as of late, it's real, and they're bringing in quality talent to this football team.
Sorry, I was on mute while I was loading a comment. Yeah, I mean, look, it's real in the sense of they really whiffed on a couple of drafts, and that's why they've found themselves the hole that they're in. The reality is, when you have the absolute dream in the NFL is to have a starting quarterback on a rookie scale contract. starting early in his tenure and being able to ride that out and being able to fill with a bunch of other high impact free agents and
Right.
high impact drafts. Yes.
Right.
A lot of people appear to have been wrong about a lot of things regarding the players they selected in this year's draft. You normally don't see early returns as quickly. And right now they are. I mean, you're starting 3 rookies and Tyquan Thornton. I mean, they were playing on the outside there, both of the rookie Joneses, for stretches of that game, and they acquitted themselves extremely well. And then Tyquan Thornton, came in, little gadget touchdown at the end on the jet sweep. Beautiful move on the goal line there. Their goal line offense was really bad to start the game. Tyquan Thornton makes a great move off the line, beats a guy clean, extremely jukey. Everyone worried about the physicality, but his releases are so freaking quick. And he just got off that line clean. He looked great. He looks fast. He looks smooth. He's such a fluid athlete. And obviously you have Zappe starting at quarterback. So you never get this many rookies contributing at this level this early in the year. And this was the opposite of what people thought. Everything looked like a project. Zappe was a career backup. Thornton, some people thought he'd be medical redshirted right out of the gate.
Yep.
Jones brothers, too small, too this, too that. There's a lot of things not to like. Our erstwhile analyst, Evan Lazar, I've never seen him so upset as he was when they selected Cole Strange.
Right.
I'm pretty sure Alex Barth didn't love it that much either. But what's going on, buddy?
Hey, how we doing? Catch me up. Where are we at?
We have saved the quarterback controversy for you, buddy.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent.
We just generally speaking, Alex, just to catch you up, we talked about how, the blueprint for the Patriots is clearly to play good defense, not turn it over, not make, your rookie QB in this case do too much. Problem was they actually asked him to do quite a bit today, and he did it. And that's he really answered the bell, and then Mike just kind of pivoted to the rookie class. But, it's impossible not to look at. This is the first game where Bailey Zappe played just played. It wasn't do nothing. It was he played, he moved, he manipulated, he stepped up in the pocket, he got through his progressions. He did a ton of things that you want to see any quarterback do, not just somebody in their second career NFL start, as a rookie drafted in the 4th round and, not supposed to sniff the field for the first several years of his NFL career.
Well, I think what was interesting, the dynamic I kind of noticed early in the game was they weren't using Kevin Harris or Pierre Strong. Ramondre Stevenson clearly was going to be the back, and there's kind of this intersection of, Ramondre had 29 touches last week. You can't run him into the ground this early in the season, but if you're not going to use the rookie running backs, well then okay, that means you're putting it on Bailey Zappe to win you the game. And it was like, well, which way are they going to go? And they went with Zappe, and it paid off. I thought, he played well. I kind of told people last week, and look, I'm patient zero of Zappe fever. We were talking about Bailey Zappe on Patriots Beat at this time last year when he was at Western Kentucky. You can go check the tapes on that. But I was here telling people last week, hey, don't get too excited. Put it in context. They didn't ask him to do a ton. It was a bad defense. That a lot of those qualifiers go out the window here.
Exactly.
That Browns defense isn't great, but I more so, what really excites me, I thought he threw the ball well, and I'll get to some of the specific throws, but if you're Zappe fever, if you're feeling Zappe, whatever it is, and you want to be able to go to your friends tomorrow and make the argument, it's what he did in the pocket that really popped.
Exactly.
Today.
He was able to step up in the pocket. Right. I mean, no one likes
against Myles Garrett. That's against a great pass rush. He's manipulating the pocket. And look, some of the throws, don't defend Bailey Zappe by talking about the throw to Hunter Henry. The defender fell down. The throw to me, and I know he threw 2 touchdowns, and the throw to Thornton was great. That was a great play by 2 rookies, really manipulating the defense with their eyes and their movements. Like, that was a high-level throw. But the best play Bailey Zappe made in this game to me, in the 3rd quarter, I think it was a false start on Hunter Henry. There's a 1st and 15. He drops back. The rush comes hot off the left. He steps up, manipulates the pocket a second time while keeping his eyes down the field, finds Tyquan Thornton going across the field, takes one more movement to buy himself time while Tyquan Thornton gets across the face of the linebacker, then leads Tyquan Thornton out in front where only Thornton can get the ball. It's a nice catch by Thornton, too, on his end, extending, showing that catch radius. But that play, to me, that play, that is a high level, that is a high skill level NFL quarterback play that he made. So, that's the one where I go to and say, oh, if he's going to do this, if he's going to make plays like that, yeah, there might be something here. This might really be kind of a competition.
And that's the crazy part, right? Because if you look back on the tape, everyone, you get through that Green Bay game, and the idea was like everyone, you looked at it, you're like, he did okay. And then when you went back and looked at it, and you're like, oh man, he didn't have very good pocket presence at all in this game. He didn't feel where the pressure was coming from. There was just a lot of issues in that game. And then, managed the game, but they weren't scoring a ton of points. They were dead in the red zone. And really their first touchdown was a Duggar return last week. And the offense wasn't humming so much. So the conversation entering this game was like, yeah, Zappe hasn't really done anything at this point. After today, the conversation is, as you just pointed out, Alex, completely different. He completely changed the narrative in a 4-hour span. Of before was, yeah, you start him against this team, and as soon as Mac's ready, let's go, into a curious conversation of like, wait a second, if he can get this much better this quickly, are you going to pull the plug right here? What if Belichick likes what he's seeing? We don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. The assumption is it's obviously going to be Mac because that's the safe assumption, but I mean, this is why it's a quarterback controversy. It has nothing to do with what fans think Bill should do. It has to do with what Bill will do. And nobody ever knows what the answer to that is, despite the fact that they insist that they do. Conventional wisdom here is, of course, it's going to be Mac. Conventional wisdom was Cam Newton was definitely going to start last year. Conventional wisdom is they're not going to sign Antonio Brown. Conventional wisdom is they're not going to go trade for Josh Gordon. Conventional wisdom is he's not going to trade Jimmy Garoppolo at the trade deadline. That's insane. And if you suggested any of those things, people would scream at you and tell you that you're stupid. So what we've learned is you don't know what Bill is thinking right now. And that's really all that matters here. We don't know.
Here's what I would say. And by the way, is my mic working better now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's what I was fiddling with. So two things to that. I'm a big, John, I say this all the time. People like to talk about Bill Belichick being unpredictable, and there is an element of truth to that. But when you do anything for 22 years, every human being has preferences in how they operate. You're going to see some trends emerge. So the one, to me, it's interesting. You listed a lot of decisions right there. There's one you didn't miss that's really the most prevalent that we need to revisit. And it may be the seminal Bill Belichick decision. It's the decision that this entire dynasty is tied back to, and that is
obviously
Brady and Bledsoe.
And that's what's so funny is people are forgetting that he literally began this whole thing by inserting a less proven, lower drafted quarterback in place of a more proven, more accomplished quarterback at a time that nobody expected something like that to happen. It's amazing that just falls out of people's brains.
So let's revisit that decision and see kind of where the comps are here. Now, the big one against them going with Zappe is Bledsoe was not Bill's guy. If Bill makes this switch, he's still pulling his guy. So that's worth noting. The other thing, you hear guys who are on that team talk about that decision is Brady won the locker room. And that is a part of it that we maybe don't see. We're going to look at the tape and we're going to rewatch the game. But how do the guys in the locker room feel about it? Who do they really want to play for? And that's, I said this last week. I still think if Mac's healthy on Monday, he's the starter. And by the way, he needs to lock himself in the facility right now because, and we talked about this last week, the reason Mac really needed to play in this game was the door wasn't open. The door was not open. And again, I still think it's Mac's team right now, but that door has been open for Bailey Zappe to walk through. And has he started to win over that locker room a little bit? Has he started to win over maybe some assistant coaches?
I think so.
There it is right there.
That door's now open. If Mac plays this week, that door never opens. The Detroit game's a fun story and we move on. If Mac can come back this week, and I still think it's his team enough that he can come back this week and you can move on. But if Bailey Zappe gets one more start, and let's be honest, he should beat Chicago and he should play well against Chicago. That's not a good team. And look, maybe Bill would have gone to Brady anyway, but the fact they were winning games in 2001 made that switch a whole hell of a lot easier. if they're still winning games, it makes it much harder to go back.
So
I want to hit on the
needs to
coaches,
come
but I
back.
want to hear from Mike here because I want to hit on the coaches too. But go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, just a thought on the locker room too, like you said, Alex. When Brady not only was winning games, he's winning over guys in the locker room. Mac has been a leader. He's a captain of this team. He's friendly with those guys. We see it when they're down in Gillette, right? But there's something around Zappy, not only in the media, not only from the fans, but on the team too. When we were in the locker room on Friday, Zappy, Tyquan, and this is more of like an insider like thing you don't always see, but you see Zappy, Tyquan Thornton, and Kendrick Bourne standing around each other, goofing around, having fun with each other. Like Bailey Zappe is one of the guys, and not that he's just the lowly backup that, they don't really talk with, right? He was in there, it sounds crazy, but having like good fun conversations, like messing around with them. Another little tidbit on that is Jonnu Smith's press conference after the game. The first week, Bailey Zappe goes in and plays well. Everyone comes to the podium and says, oh yeah, he did really well. He came in and he did his thing, right? And then, oh yeah, he played really excellent. And even Ramondre today said, he's a great player. But I noted Jonnu Smith as well at the podium today. Not only was just like, he was good, he was like, wait, is he going to listen to this? Oh, Bailey needs a little work. Like messing with him, giving him a little jab. Like there's something to that. There's absolutely something to that in him being, a part of that team and being entrenched in that core right now.
I would say, look at how it went for Jonnu Smith when Mac was in there, and look at how it's gone for Jonnu Smith the last couple of weeks. These guys ultimately, and they this isn't to say they don't like Mac. They may think Mac's a great guy, but
sure,
they need to get the football. They need to get the football so they keep getting paid. If Bailey Zappe's the one who's getting them the football, that's where this trend kind of shifts. Although in that line of thought, I will say, if and when Mac does come back, let him run this offense. Do not put him back whatever that disaster was weeks 1 and 2. And look, the Detroit offense was a little handcuffed. This to me was a more wide open version of what they did against Detroit. This is what the offense should be. That play action stuff they were doing, excellent. Give me more of that.
I don't think this is a quarterback controversy. I think it's a playbook controversy.
Yes and no. I think it's a quarterback controversy.
It could be both.
Insofar
which quarterback
as
you aren't running which playbook.
But we haven't seen Mac run it in his second year.
Well, what we haven't seen Mac do is believe in it. And that's, I think, where the biggest issue lies, is there was a lot of reporting going on about Mac has been really pissed off since training camp and through the early part of the regular season, second guessing every single thing that all of these coaches do. And so Bailey Zappe just comes in, is like, yep, what do you guys want? Okay, I'll do that. And all of a sudden things start humming along. I think this is where you might have an issue right now inside the walls of Foxborough. I think the Patriots players like Mac. I think they liked him a lot last year. I think he shows a lot of leadership traits. I think the coaches don't. I think the assistant coaches there's been frustration there. And right now they probably feel better about how things are running with Bailey Zappe, as opposed to, but really it all comes down to, what does Bill think? But I can tell you right now, I think Patricia, who's criticizing him? Yeah, every single thing has been on Patricia Judge and the shit show that Bill Belichick dumped on Mac's lap. Who's talking about that anymore? Anybody?
No, but Matt Patricia had a good week. That was a good game for Matt Patricia.
Yeah.
It's a totally different offense that they were in with Mac, though. So, I want to see it with Mac first, because we've seen it. Mac's a better quarterback. Mac is like a high quality. I know it's crazy to say first round pick, but he's made better plays in the NFL than we see Bailey Zappe make today.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. Again, that play,
sure.
I want to see it with the offense. I want to see it with this offense that they ran last year. The quick hitters, the run heavy play action stuff that we didn't see with Mac earlier in the year. They went to this streamlined nonsense that didn't work. As soon as Mac goes down, they also changed the offense. So it's
look, Mike, I agree with you, but so here's I think where the issue lies, and this is what the real competition is. If they're winning, again, I think Mac can come back.
How do you pull him if you're winning? How do you pull him?
That's the thing. If Mac misses another game,
the hard part.
3 wins in a row, that gets tough. I still think they can this week, but this is just the competition. Really, Zappe, he's playing well, so I don't want to say he's irrelevant in this, but it's almost, and I hate that I'm using this phrase, and I don't mean to use it as a pun. It's Mac versus time. Mac needs to get back, because the more that time passes, especially with how easy their schedule is over the next 2 months, the harder it's going to be for the team to go back to him. So it's just a matter of Mac needs to get back as soon as he can, which is why I said he needs to be the first player in the facility Monday morning, and he needs to not leave until the game is over next Monday night.
Well, here's the thing, though, and this is where this is what I don't understand about the conversation. Of course, Mac Jones, you would think, is better than Bailey Zappi. He was drafted higher. He has a higher pedigree. But we're not talking about this. Isn't I don't know why it's so unthinkable. You're not talking about Dak Prescott, Cooper Rush, somebody who's established, somebody who's been playing and a veteran and a winner. Mac's got a pretty good season under his belt with a really cupcake schedule, and then a total flame out on the back half of the year and an extremely inconsistent start to this season. What he's been is he's been okay. He has not been outstanding. That's his ceiling may be considerably higher. He might still yet be an outstanding quarterback. He hasn't been. He's been okay. Bailey Zappi has been at least okay, certainly today. And that's the thing is, what you're comparing here is not the 6-year veteran who's made multiple Pro Bowls, who's the unquestioned starter coming back. It is certainly a fair conversation to have. I don't know who the right person is. We don't have enough of a look at Zappi to be able to know. And you're right. There might have been doing things with Mac in the early part of the year that they're not doing right now with Zappi. Also, the offense and just generally the team has evolved. The defense is playing better. The offensive line has really come together. There are things working for Zappi now that were not working for Mac. For Mac. But instead of making Mac versus Zappi comparisons, why don't you make other people versus the Browns comparisons? Look at Justin Herbert last week, 22 of 30. Justin freaking Herbert, okay? A 30-28 game, 22 of 34 for 228. Zappi's numbers were better today, okay? And that's granted, he had a guy who ran for 170, but you can compare to other people who played against these teams. It's a really freaking good game. It doesn't matter. Just discounting it because it's the Browns, I don't think makes any sense.
No, and I'm with you on that. I don't know if you're arguing either one of us or just in general.
No, just general. It's the perception, not you guys. The perception that it's unthinkable. I think we're all on the same page of Mike is leaning Mac, but I think it's an open discussion. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the answer is. So that's
my point. That's kind of my whole point coming out of this game is, by not playing this week, Mac has, and he may very well get his job back.
Started the conversation.
Mac has, at the very least, made it a discussion, right? It wasn't a discussion after the Lions game because we knew that team wasn't good, and they scored only one touchdown. But the other thing I will say to is we don't know what Mac looks like in this offense. I do think that's a big part of it, John. You talked about how other players are playing well. I think the other reason some people are pushing so hard for Zappi, and this is just human nature, I think there is some recency bias involved. Think about what happened the last time we saw Mac. He threw 3 interceptions. Now, granted, I don't think all 3 were his fault, but he threw 3 interceptions with the last one really hurting the Patriots' chances to win that football game, right? So the Aguilar play was a fumble.
But I don't think people are
he started this turnover-heavy game. What?
I don't think any Patriots fans are anti-Mac. That's the thing is there's no
I don't agree with that. There's anti-Mac.
Meaning
I
there are some
people.
Text,
John.
There are some people who think he sucks. I'm saying most people desperately want him to be a franchise quarterback. There's not a lot of agenda here. In a perfect world, Mac would get better. He would be the guy, and then you'd just wash your hands with it and never have the cover. You'd rather believe you've got your quarterback for the next 12, 15 years and have to bounce from journeyman to 4th-round rookie to who knows what and have an inconsistency at the position. People want it to be Mac. I know there are a lot of people who think he's trash, though.
This just shows how difficult it is, honestly, to be the next guy after Tom Brady, right? As soon as Mac plays well last year, everyone's all Mac like crazy. The second Zappi's starting to play better, it's, now we want Zappi, because they just want someone. We just want someone there who's a consistent quarterback. It doesn't really matter who it is.
I don't think people care. I don't think they have a loyalty. They want the best quarterback. Period.
Right. There's not the loyalty there was with Bledsoe around here in 2000.
But that's my point. That's the recency bias in it. The last time Mac didn't get hurt having thrown for 3 touchdowns, right? If Mac gets hurt and thrown for 3 touchdowns, we'd be talking about how Bailey Zappi's a nice story, but can we get Mac back already? It's a recency bias. The fact that, and people will say, well, okay, you're saying if he was good and got hurt, but he was bad. It was one game with weird circumstances, I still think he's the better option, just having seen it. The ceiling is higher.
I think so too. I think people in the chat and people out there who are just running to the defense of Mac Jones aren't listening to the conversation. The conversation is now all of a sudden there is a conversation. Nobody's sitting here saying Bailey Zappi is undeniably better than Mac Jones and you should bench him, but it's now become interesting. It's literally all we're saying.
Look, it's a cliche.
There are some people saying it. We're not saying it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an old cliche. The most popular person on a bad NFL team is the backup quarterback. When Mac got hurt, the Patriots were 1-2 and then essentially 1-3. They were 1-3 before Zappi got his first start. I get why people are into him. I totally get it. It's a weird circumstance. It's a weird set of circumstances.
Yeah. The whole thing is weird. And again, you just don't know. That's the whole thing. And what's interesting is all of the people here sitting here defending Mac, if Bill pulls the plug and goes with Bailey Zappi, they'll be like, well, that was the right call probably because Bill did it. So again,
they'll say it until Zappi has his until you face a tough team, until you face the Buffalo Bills on December 1st and he throws 2 picks. And then all of a sudden, Zappi sucks. And what's Bill doing? He should have gone back to
Does anybody remember what happened in Tom Brady's second start? My guess is no,
Third
but
start.
It was freaking miserable.
You're talking about the Miami game.
Freaking
start, third game.
miserable.
You're right. That's the equivalent of this game for Zappi and the time.
Right. It was, but the Miami game, he came out, he had an okay game that worked out well in his first win. And then he absolutely had one of those Miami
86 passing yards.
Miami meltdown games, just brutal, multiple picks. And I remember Drew patting on the shoulder, kind of like, that's just how it goes sometime, up and down, kid. And I think that was where Bledsoe was like, I'm definitely getting my job back after this kind of game, so yeah, there'll probably be a game like that for Zappi if you continue, but it's an interesting conversation now. It's not going anywhere. Unless of course he's made up his mind and it's Mac no matter what. And then Mac starts next week. Where it gets really interesting, Alex, is if they bring in Mac next week and he really struggles against a really crappy Bears team.
Then all
is there a short leash?
Got a problem.
Is there a short leash if Mac comes out and struggles?
That's the problem. You're much better holding off and continuing to play Zappi, hoping that either he takes the job outright by just being dazzling or starts to show chinks in the armor and you're like, okay, I see it now. This is why the other guy's better. While also Mac gets fully healthy. That's actually the smart play. Before you introduce the controversy, just keep ruling Mac out against these tomato cans until he's 1,000% healthy. Absolutely no need.
I brought this up before. That's a double-edged sword because what happens then when Mac wins if they think Mac is better, if Bailey Zappi keeps winning games, you can't go back. Even if you maybe think Mac is
at that point, but he makes a decision for you. The decision gets made for you if Zappi keeps playing well.
Yeah, correct.
Sorry, that's what I meant. If Zappi keeps playing, but what if he doesn't keep playing well, but they keep winning? Because I think that's a very realistic option as well.
Yeah.
I just think saying
that he stays.
I guess. And then you run into Buffalo and it's going to be too much for him.
Yeah.
And
you think Mac's going to do well against Buffalo? What did we see Mac do in his last start against Buffalo? Bad, right?
Not great.
I'm just saying, I'll take the guy with more natural talent. And again, I'm a Bailey Zappi guy. I like him. Mac has the higher ceiling. He has more natural talent. That's just the reality of it at this point.
I do go back to constantly.
If you're gonna sit Mac Jones for essentially half a season, that's a major disservice in a major,
I'm not gonna sit him. Bill might though.
No, but that's what I'm saying. If they think he's the guy, but they still sit him for half a season just because basically Bailey Zappi's fun, then you're totally screwing with this development.
I don't know that it's fun. He might just win the job. I mean, again, let's pretend it's this. This is all right. Let's make it simpler. If it's not quarterback, Okay, you drafted a receiver.
Yeah, but it's quarterback.
There's nothing like a quarterback. You can't even do it. You can't compare it.
You drafted a running back, a receiver, a cornerback in the first round, and the guy in the 4th or 5th round outplays him. Bill always goes with the guy in the 4th or 5th round. It's not even a question. Undrafted free agents, J.C. Jackson is playing over guys drafted high in the 2nd round in his first year.
It's a totally different ballgame, John.
Okay, but this is different. That's not. So what you're saying is they think maybe Bailey Zappi is the guy. If you really think
they might. I don't know what Bill thinks.
So here's what I'm telling you. Regardless of who they think, this is basically my argument. Whoever you think is the guy, if that guy is available, that guy should be playing. You should not sit one because you feel some sort of responsibility to the other.
Do you think Bill's going to play politics? Do you think Bill's going to put his finger in the air and say, this could be bad for Mac and the media is going to have a field day and his feelings are going to be hurt and it's bad for his development? No, if he thinks one guy is better than the other, he's playing that guy, right?
Right. But what it sounded like you were saying, and maybe I misunderstood you, what it sounded like you were saying is basically play Zappi until you can't and then go back to Mac because he's really the guy.
I'm saying that would be tactically smart, but I don't think Bill thinks that way. I think he plays the guy he thinks is best.
I don't even think it's tactically smart because whichever one they believe is the guy, whether it's Mac, whether it's Zappi, these are both young quarterbacks. The only way young quarterbacks get better is by playing. So whoever you think is the guy, whoever you think is your future starter, that guy needs to be in the game because he needs to be progressing, because he needs to get better so he can lead this franchise for the next 5, 10, 15, whatever it is years. If they think that's Mac, I happen to think it's Mac. If they think that's Mac, as soon as Mac can get back in, he needs to be back in. They can't say, oh, he's like 90%, but who gives that? No, he needs to play. If they think it's Zappi, if Zappi's shown them enough that they're like, hey, you know what? He's our guy now. Don't go back. Then you don't go back to Mac out. And this is kind of what, to your point, John, you don't go back to Mac just because he was a 1st round pick. If they think Zappi's the guy, Zappi's the guy, you got to play him because he's a rookie quarterback. He needs to learn. He needs to get better.
My scenario, Alex, was if they didn't know, if Bill's still figuring it out, and this is almost an open audition for Zappi, it would make sense to continue letting him play while Mac gets 100% healthy and hope that it resolves itself through his play. Then you get a clearer picture. It's just a longer audition period because right now, I don't know that he knows 100%. I definitely think it's this guy. And if he does, there's no controversy. It's game over, and the next guy plays.
I guess how hurt do we think Mac is at this point, though?
Everyone.
He traveled. He's been talking for 3
There was a
weeks
real chance he was going to play today.
I always thought that was all subterfuge. I don't believe any of it. Every specialist said 6 to 8, but realistically, if you want to push it 4 to 6, I always thought it'd be at least this many games with a possible return next week at the early. I didn't think he was really close at all. I never did.
But see, I don't think they would have traveled him to Cleveland if there was no way he was going to play today.
And also,
he could have been back in New England continuing to get treatment instead of walking around, standing on the sideline, traveling from bus to hotel, getting a workout in on the field, flying back and forth like that. That does a disservice to your injury as it is. If he wasn't going to play this week, they would have just kept him home. I think there was still a chance he played.
Just seeing him at practice, he's moving around well. Like he's moving around significantly better than he was 2 weeks ago. The limp is minimal at this point, at least the last time we saw him on Friday. So
he wasn't just throwing passes. He was running back and through bags. He was like legitimately dropping back. He wasn't just static throwing like he was 2 weeks ago. There was movement there.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it makes more sense that it's Mac, but you don't know because nobody knows. Nobody ever knows, and that's why it's a conversation. I don't know. You don't know.
I still think you have to see him in this offense that they've been running with Zach.
Sure. Well, John, let me ask you this, and I don't mean to call out your age here. You covered Brady Bledsoe.
Yeah.
I was 6. Mike, were you even born?
I was 3. So
how similar is this really? How similar does it feel to you really?
Well, Bledsoe was a legend in the sense of Bledsoe changed people had a real affection for Bledsoe because his arrival was the Patriots kind of entry into legitimacy. They were a clown show. And when he came in there, the level of excitement was through the roof. You know, you're just this downtrodden franchise. So he was such a special part of this. And in the early going, he was just this gunslinger. He's having these duels with friggin' Marino, each throwing for 400 something yards. He's leading the Patriots to the playoffs. They get to a Super Bowl. He was a big deal, but everybody knew he was kind of a limited guy. He had a cannon for an arm. Protection had to be perfect. And if that was the case, he could pick you apart. And you even saw it in his first couple of years with Buffalo when he was gone. But you could see him faltering a little bit. I just don't think anybody at all. I will say, here's the comparison. I don't remember anybody at all thinking there was any real possibility Brady was taking that job. Even Bledsoe was stunned by it. Mm-hmm. If you cue up the tape from his press conference, he was assured all the way through that it was his job when he was returning. But as you said, as the case with Zappe here, they just kept stringing together wins, and they kind of liked the way things looked with him. And whether or not they thought Drew might have had more innate talent, Bill's like, I'm sticking with this guy. And Bledsoe looked like somebody just, murdered his dog. He couldn't believe it. And it was a very divided camp. And I put myself in the Bledsoe camp. I'll own it all the way through the Super Bowl. When Bledsoe got the start, when Brady rolled his ankle and Bledsoe came in and Pitt, I wanted them to start Bledsoe again in the Super Bowl. I thought they got that far in spite of Brady, not because of him. And a lot of people felt that way. It was extremely divided. But Bledsoe had so much more cachet than Mac. That's what, is different here. That's why I think that the decision is easier. Mac's a second-year guy. It's not like some guy who's got, the whatever. That was really controversial at the time to remove it. But as you said, you'd seen enough of it with Drew on the shelf to feel good about the decision.
He had just been paid the highest contract in NFL history as well, right? So it's like Mac's still on a rookie deal. He had, like you say, he hasn't really proven much yet. It's not like there's a big financial decision here either, like there was with Bledsoe.
Yeah, it's more, just like I said, a lot of the way I look at the team is Bill's been doing this for so long. There's bound to be little patterns here or there, and you can track them. They're all over the place. You can find them. They work. So look, it was 20 years ago. It's not a ton of precedent. It's one decision when the league looked completely different, but this is just how I project the team through my eyes. This is how I do it. Where are the similar situations? How did they handle it at that point? This is really all we have to go off of. And again, I was 6, so I don't really remember the nuts and bolts of it, which is making this a little difficult, but I do think it's worth it.
It was interesting. It was such an interesting.
I was telling people last week, don't go there. Don't go to 2001. That's not what this is. I think it's time we dust off those newspapers and reread some of that, because there might be some precedent now.
And at the time, what people didn't know, and that a lot of it came out after the fact, is how much they really started to like Brady in training camp that year. It was his second year, and how enamored was, and behind the scenes, them saying, I think he's better. Some people, the way history is rewritten a little bit is that Bill wanted to make that switch all along and was looking for an excuse, and that kind of gave it to him. And once he saw that Brady could handle it, he was solid in his decision. And that's how the story is kind of told. But it's such an interesting footnote. I mean, Brady began training camp as the number 3 behind Damon Heward, and this
wasn't he behind Michael?
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure they kept 4 quarterbacks.
The year before.
The year before. Okay,
I believe. And that year he jumped from 3 presumably to 2 over Damon Heward, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's cute." Who's the guy who's going to be holding the clipboard? And it ended up being such a monumental thing that he had this good training camp and jumped up ahead of the veteran. And that would have been like Zappe supplanting Hoyer this year as the number 2. Had he done that and he had gone in ahead of Hoyer, which obviously Hoyer, played 8 snaps and then, got hurt. But it would have been kind of the same comp there. But he had impressed people enough where he kind of took that little 2 slot. So it was interesting.
Again, I think it's worth revisiting that storyline right now, because it does sort of feel relevant as how does Bill Belichick think about these sort of things? And I'll say this, you kind of played up Bledsoe as this guy who had this aura about him and he came in to save the franchise. I know he had it's not exactly the same because he'd been here for years. He got the team to a Super Bowl.
No, but Mac's that guy too. He's like, oh my God.
When you were talking about, you were at this low point and they draft this kid and it was supposed to be the whole, the line I think you used was return to legitimacy.
Yeah.
Wasn't that what the Mac pick was all about? We went through that weird year with Cam Newton that felt like one long experiment, and it didn't really feel like they were trying to win, right? And then Mac comes in and it's, okay, hey, we're back. This is a real NFL. No offense to Cam Newton. It was more than just the overall feel of it. Hey, we're back to NFL football now. Isn't it that kind of feels like a parallel? And again, Big Mac guy, and again, I was 6, but a big Bledsoe guy. So, but it does feel like there's a little bit of a parallel there.
To some extent.
I'm not a Brady guy. I love Brady too. But
of course. I mean, it's impossible
not.
It's impossible not to, but there are people on both sides of that conversation. That's how it came about. I mean, you're certainly going to make that comp because, again, I mean, Belichick had already done that before with Testaverde in Cleveland, so, I mean, that's his track record. He's going to play the guy he likes. It just might be silly because Bill's sitting at home reading the clippings and watching this stuff and might be thinking to himself, I'm definitely friggin' playing Mac. And if that's the case, that's it. It's over.
And it's a good problem to have because
it only then becomes
games.
A controversy if Mac comes back and struggles. But Bill might be like, Bill might think we're all the dumbest people in the world for even talking about it. So
he has his feet up laughing right now because they're winning games. It's not like they're losing games and trying to decide, oh, we need this quarterback versus this guy, and they both suck. They both play pretty good football. Zappy's been awesome, and they're winning. So it's not like it's a good problem to have in their room.
Right.
Well, look, there's the other angle to this too. And John, you weren't here when we talked about this last week, but you're going to hate this one. Bailey Zappe's played basically 2 good games one good game and one not bad game for the Patriots. You know who else looked? Okay, so let me put it this way.
Yeah.
Let's say this is it for Zappe.
Let's do it.
Where I'm going, John. Let's say this is it for Zappe, right? Mac Jones comes back next week. We don't see the kid again for the rest of the season. Is it fair to say he's built up some mystique around him?
Who?
Do you agree with that?
Zappe? So you're talking, are we going to Matt Castle Zappe and get a good pick for him? That's what you're talking about?
Well, Jimmy.
Jimmy
or Matt Castle him. Yeah.
Is
Jimmy's a better comp because you barely saw him. And people have said this in the chat. Put Zappe on bubble wrap right now. Make everybody think he's worth 2 second-round picks next year and dish him to a QB-needy team and never let him see the field again. It's never going to get better than this. Certainly a strategy.
Don't think Bill's not considering that option either, especially if Mac's close to healthy, because we know teams in this league will overpay for quarterbacks. And I said this when they drafted Zappe. Why did they do that? Why did they do that? I said, worst case scenario, you needed a long-term backup. You got a long-term backup. This kid, as much as you hate the concept of picking a quarterback, this kid can play. If he ever gets on the field and he shows you enough, that 4th-round pick could become a 3rd or a 2nd-round pick like that, the way teams pay for quarterbacks in this league. I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Belichick's not at least has that in the back of his head. He fleeced. I don't care that we're rewriting history here. He fleeced the San Francisco 49ers out of a 2nd-round pick when he traded Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yes and no. He could have gotten multiple.
Strong.
He could have gotten even more. If he felt like it, he could have gotten more. Again,
look, if they turn
and if you want to go strict
into a 2nd-round pick
value
in a year,
chart there,
they did it.
Go.
If they turn a 4th-round pick into a 2nd-round pick in a year, he nailed it.
And if you want to go strict value chart on a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo as well, he was a 2nd-round pick, and you got a 2nd-round pick for him 4 years later. So that's value in itself.
And again,
but you should have gotten more, like you said.
And people here are like, "Oh, this isn't a good comp." Jimmy played virtually no games. He played that
game and a half. Game and a half.
He played the Drew suspension. I mean, the Brady suspension.
He played the Cardinals game, and that team ended up. We found out later was not good. We thought,
and he was shaky, but he hung in there. Yeah,
and then he played well. He had a half against Miami. He played a pretty good.
Don't
half
call that
Miami,
decent. That was a great half against Miami. You can't call it decent.
Fine, but that's it. That's his.
I'm just saying.
2nd-round pick, and I would argue, coming out of college, and I know Jimmy was a higher pick, but coming out of college, Zappe has more pedigree than Jimmy did. He's coming 100%. From the FBS level. He broke all those records. Teams still consider that pedigree when players are this young. So for what it's worth.
Mike, do you have studio control?
Yeah, I'm in the back.
I have to hand the reins over to you. I have to cash out of this show, and I'm going to leave it to the rest of you guys. We spent an inordinate amount of time talking about this, but this is the number one story, and it's going to continue to be. Not just this week, not next week, on and on and on. It's going to be as we assess who the play of whoever is playing quarterback, because now you have 2 flavors and you've sampled them both, and you might like both of them, or you might like one a little bit more than the other, and you're always going to be wondering. And this is going to continue for weeks and weeks. It's not just the story du jour. Whoever plays next week it's going to be a whatever. And if Matt comes back next week, we're certainly going to talk about it again. So on and on this story goes. We haven't talked about the rookies as much as we want. Tyquan Thornton, the return of the tight ends, that was terrific. There's a lot of lower thirds in the studio there, Mike. So fire away. You guys get it going. I'm sorry I have to bow out, guys. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks, John. No, we'll work around this a little bit here. What we can also do, Alex, is kind of hit some more bigger storyline pieces here, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty offensive and defensive stuff in Pat's beat earlier this week.
Yeah, I think let's kind of – we're already at 45 minutes here, so let's just rapid fire through this, and that's a big market tease for either Monday or Tuesday whenever we do Pat's
exactly, yeah. Week. Yeah, like John said, we have some lower thirds in here that we can kind of shake up and kind of go final thoughts, I guess. I mean, my biggest takeaway today was just the fact, and I had said it at the beginning of the show, but Belichick's draft picks over the last 3 years look really, really good. Like, this narrative that he was a poor drafter, and don't get me wrong, it was there. You know, there's the N'Keal Harrys of the world and the Jawan Williams of the world and this, and that, and the other thing. But the last 3 drafts, they've brought in guys like, I know, Mac Jones,
Bailey Zappi, Cole Strange, Tyquan Thornton, Kyle Duggar's a monster, Mike Onwenu was a late draft, Ramondre. Like, that narrative's gone. Bill Belichick has completely redeemed himself in the drafting front. For the 7 players, here's my list. Strange, Thornton, both Joneses, Zappi, Stevenson, Barmore, Mack, Onwenu, Duggar. 85% of those guys played like high quality snaps today in a very solid win. Like that's not something to just like wash away. No, it's not. And you know, you can kind of time that out with Matt Groh coming on the scene, and he's 100%. Been excellent. Like I don't want it, you know, this to come across as, hey, we knocked Bill when he was a bad drafter. We're not giving him credit when he was a good one, but you know, he'll be the first to tell you the draft's a collaborative effort. Yep. They got a good one in Matt Groh. They got a guy who knows what he's doing in Matt Groh. So I think he's been able to help Bill out quite a bit. So credit to him. My big takeaway from this game is, you know, as much as we talked about the quarterbacks, my biggest takeaway from this game is the same one it was last week. This defense is freaking legit. Yeah, this defense it can play. They were down arguably their top corner today in Jonathan Jones. Say what you will about Jacoby Brissett. He's an NFL quarterback. He may not be a good NFL quarterback, but he's an NFL quarterback. They kept him in check. The real number, though, and I'm going to stall for a second here while I pull it up. Yeah, one thing against the run. The Browns came in 5th in the league in rushing. Nick Chubb was the league's leading rusher. He was averaging 5.3 yards per carry. Patriots held him to 56 yards on 12 carries. That's 4.7 per. So 4.7, not that much of a drop off from 5.3. But I'm going to screw with the numbers here a little bit. Don't call me a homer. I'll explain why I'm doing it after.
It makes sense. You tweeted it earlier.
There was a 2-play sequence in the third quarter. Nick Chubb has an 18-yard run and a 14-yard run back-to-back. If you take those 2 plays out, he didn't have a run longer than 7 yards, and the rest of the game, he had 10 carries for 24 yards. Now, I'm not doing that to pump up the Patriots defense's tie, maybe a little bit, but the real reason I'm doing it, okay, is, so all right, he averaged 5 yards a carry, essentially, Nick Chubb.
Yep.
But it's very, very different if he was running the ball for 5 yards on every carry, right? It's not like he was getting them for 4 here,
exactly.
5 there, 6 there, 5 there, 4 there, like, because that's where he lives. That's what makes him such a dangerous runner, is he really gets out and with
chunk plays.
You know, I'm talking about with that offensive line.
Yeah,
he rarely gets stopped at that first level. And when you're regularly in 2nd and 5, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, right? When you're regularly in those downs, it becomes very easy to move the football. That's what the entire Browns offense is predicated on. Outside of 1 2-play sequence in this game, he was negligible. 2.4 yards per carry. They made him an absolute non-factor outside of, again, 2 plays. That's an excellent, excellent, excellent job by this defensive front. And they did it, by the way, without Lawrence Guy, one of their best run stoppers. And did Barmore got hurt in the first half, right?
He got hurt in the first half, yeah.
Who I know people think was a pass rusher, has been much better as a run stopper this year. They were down 2 of their best run stoppers. The guy who should be their best run stopper, Devon Gotcha, had a great game. He was a big part of it. Carl Davis came up big a couple times, but that's you want to really feel good about something. Again, we talked about it ad nauseum before. We don't really know what Bailey Zappi is. This was fun, but there's still a long way to go. 2 weeks in a row, this run defense has come in and absolutely shut down an elite rushing attack. This is for real.
Yeah, 100%. And you're giving Brissett his credit where it's due, I guess, but like today just showed that this Browns offense is absolutely nothing without their run
Let
game.
me be honest. I only brought up the passing game first because I was stalling to try to find those numbers on the rushing.
Okay,
game.
yeah,
let's talk about what they did against the run primarily.
Well, exactly. Like that's the thing is like they're nothing without this run game. They knew they had to stop the run, and the Browns knew they had to establish a run because they're nothing without a run game. And the Patriots just did it man on a man, hat on a hat, and got it done. Like you said too, the big point that you kind of, not that you jumped in front of me because you were on your own spiel there, but you did it without Lawrence Guy and Christian Barmore for most of the game. So like backups on the inside. I mean, again, they're stuffing the run. Tavai looks good again. I mean, their defense is legit. That's what I got to say. Even transitioning from the run, I guess, to the pass a little bit. But Kyle Duggar, we'll get into him more on earlier this week on Patriots Beat. But Kyle Duggar is an elite NFL safety. He's always near the ball. Every single time the ball's thrown, he's there. Awesome
in the
interception.
Running, he was a big part of their run defense today, too.
Part of the run stuffing, too. So it's like he's everywhere. His run stopping and his tackling ability was superb throughout the whole season. But when he was hurt, at times he kind of stalled in pass coverage a little bit. He got burnt by Njoku on one play today, but outside of that, he was awesome. He had the interception on the first drive, got the Patriots the ball back right away. I mean, again, he's an elite safety in this NFL.
And that was a nice pick too, because he got his head around kind of late, and he picked that ball up and kind of, you got to realize on those plays where it's almost like just a lob, like a center field lob. You got to realize just real quick, okay, the ball's here. The receiver's here, the sideline's here. I have teammates here and here. Like, you've got to register all of that very quickly. And then to get his head around late, like, he did not have a lot of time to pick up everything. And you would have thought he was alone, how casually he caught that ball. Like, the way he kind of just pieced that whole puzzle together like that and got himself in position to make that pick. So, you're right. He did get beat on the double move by David Njoku.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
It didn't amount to anything either. Yeah.
Yeah, they probably saw something on tape and realized they could exploit it or whatever, but overall, excellent game for him. Excellent game.
So we've talked about a ton of positives here. I mean, the quarterback controversy, if you want to call it that, I'm still not calling it that. That's one thing, but it's a good problem to have. So
we call it the quarterback question. We're going to need to call it something. We're going to need to come up with a term.
Yeah, so we'll call it the quarterback question here on Patriots postgame. But that's a positive. The run defense is a positive. We've talked positives all day. We got to balance it out with one little bit of negative. I think you had mentioned it that you wanted to kind of touch on this, but right tackle Isaiah Wynn, after a great game last week, really kind of came back down to earth again today. He was benched in the second half for Marcus Cannon. Any thoughts on that? I mean, it didn't really the penalties affected them, but I mean, the offense still ran smoothly. So, like, I don't think he was that bad. I mean, I don't know. He got benched. So what are your thoughts?
I'll put it this way. And people know I'm not a big Isaiah Wynn guy.
Right.
I can't fault anybody for getting beat one-on-one by Myles Garrett.
Right.
I mean, the rush he had on Trent Brown was outstanding. He's holding Trent Brown off with one arm. If I look at those plays and I'm thinking, why is Isaiah Wynn left to block Myles Garrett one-on-one? Where's the tight end? Where's the running back to help?
Right.
But like you said, and by the way, I don't think that's why he was benched. The penalties, man.
Yeah, exactly.
The penalties are they're too much. It's every single opening drive.
They're drive stoppers.
They're facing some sort of first, second, third, and 15 because he's leaving the line early. I think he had a holding in this game as well. I know he had multiple flags. Like, he's got to get that cleaned up. I thought Marcus Cannon was fine as well coming in, right? I thought Marcus Cannon held up again against Myles Garrett. You have to put a curve on it. Like, you just have to. That guy's so freaking good.
Right. He's outstanding.
Myles Garrett.
It's a mental rep thing more than a physical thing. It's mental, not physical. The fact
Myles Garrett isn't necessarily the reason you're leaving early. Myles Garrett isn't the reason you're holding guys who aren't Myles Garrett. So, not a great game for him, even if you take the Myles Garrett element out. Like, I'm just going to focus on the penalties, and there's still a problem. We don't even need to go to the Myles Garrett stuff. That's just, it's too low-hanging fruit. It's not necessary to get into.
100%. Yeah, I agree. All right, I guess we can wrap. We kind of hit on the major factors again. Alex, do you have any final thoughts before we kick it over here?
Yes, somebody just brought this up in the chat. Mac Wilson.
My chat's messed up on this side, so I can't see it.
Mac Wilson making a big play against his former team. Always love to see that. I know that those kind of plays mean a ton to guys when that kind of stuff happens. So Chase Winovich was out. He's hurt. He didn't get to
he's on IR.
Chance to do it to the Patriots, but shout out to Mac Wilson for that one. I'm sure he's feeling real good right now.
Yeah, good stuff. And Jacoby couldn't do it. So again, point Patriots. A dominant Patriots win today. One final thought before we wrap it up. It's not really a thought, but it's an interesting accolade. Zappy today, he's the only rookie quarterback in Super Bowl era to win 2 games and post a 100 passer rating in each of his first 2 starts. Call it what you want. Last week might have been a layup. This week was definitely a tougher challenge, and he's passed the test so far. Again, it's a quarterback question, but yeah, go.
You want the real number? Like that's
Sure.
That's interesting. You want the real number. So I always do. I'll plug, when there's an interesting game for any, quarterback, receiver, whatever,
Yep.
I plug essentially the benchmarks, right? If this game is the minimum, I plug them to Pro Football Reference and see what comes out. So here's Bailey Zappe's benchmarks today. 34 pass attempts, completed 70% of them, went over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. So those are the benchmarks. Games with at least 34 pass attempts, or at least 70% of those are completed. You also go over 300 yards. You also throw for at least 2 touchdowns without an interception in Patriots history. Tom Brady did it 15 times.
Yep.
And Bailey Zappe did it today. And that's it. Bledsoe didn't sneak his way in there. Mack didn't sneak his way in there. Grogan didn't sneak his way in there. It's Brady 15 times and however many 200-something starts, regular season. I didn't run the numbers in the postseason. It's Brady 15 times and Bailey Zappe today. That's it. That's the number. That's the group.
Yep.
So
you played well. The question's there. That'll do it for us here. Again, we'll get into it. Me and Alex will go more in depth either Tuesday or Monday night or Tuesday night. We haven't really talked that over yet, but we will be back with Patriots beat early this week to go over this game. The Patriots beat the Browns 38-15 today. A shellacking of Cleveland. Bailey Zappe making it a quarterback controversy, potentially, with Mac Jones still on the bench with his ankle injury. Defense is lights out again. Kyle Duggar's a baller. And this draft class this year, the year before, and the year before that are pretty legit. So major points here. Again, Patriots beat the Browns 38-15 today. Me and Alex will be back on Patriots Beat later this week to go more in depth. You can read all of Alex's stuff on 985thesportshub.com and follow him on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. We'll give you that plug. Same here with me. Read my stuff, CLNSmedia.com. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Kadlick. Again, we'll be back later this week to get more in depth, but that's it for Patriots postgame. So